They call it love, but it's really control. The hidden reason behind a narcissist's manipulation. When a narcissist sets their sights on something, morality and empathy vanish from their path. Their hunger for control eclipses reason, and they will manipulate, deceive, and exploit anyone necessary to get what they want. Psychologists describe this as instrumental exploitation, a behavioral pattern where others are not seen as people, but as tools. Every relationship becomes transactional, every gesture calculated. When charm no longer suffices, they escalate. Emotional abuse, gaslighting, humiliation, silent treatments soon gives way to more overt cruelty. Some even resort to physical intimidation, not always with violence, but with a presence designed to instill fear. According to psychologists, this shift from manipulation to abuse is driven by narcissistic injury. Their ego cannot tolerate opposition or exposure. Even when confronted with undeniable evidence of their wrongdoing, they will deny, distort, and deflect. Admitting fault feels like annihilation to them, so they repeat the same refrain, "That's not true, you're imagining things, you're the problem." Psychologists emphasize that this cycle of denial serves two purposes. It shields the narcissist from shame while keeping their victim trapped in confusion. Victims begin doubting their perceptions, believing perhaps they misunderstood or overreacted. Over time, this psychological erosion, known as gaslighting fatigue, makes the victim dependent on the narcissist for reality itself. That dependency is the narcissist's ultimate goal. To protect themselves, psychologists recommend victims practice reality anchoring, documenting incidents, seeking validation from trusted allies, and consulting mental health professionals who can help them differentiate manipulation from truth. Knowledge becomes armor against distortion. In every relationship with a narcissist, there's an invisible game being played. The rules are unspoken, but the objective is always control. Psychologists refer to this as the narcissistic game theory, where the narcissist engineers scenarios that make the victim question themselves and their worth. During the love-bombing phase, they flood you with affection and admiration, not as genuine love, but as bait. They memorize your insecurities, study your emotional needs, and mirror your dreams so convincingly that you mistake it for intimacy. But once they've secured your devotion, the switch flips. The warmth disappears. Praise turns into criticism, and your achievements become threats. Psychologists explain that this reversal happens because narcissists cannot tolerate sharing the spotlight. Your success triggers their envy, reminding them of their own inadequacy. They tear you down not because they hate you, but because they cannot stand to see you shine. The tragedy is that the victim, once a confident individual, begins to shrink under constant invalidation. You start questioning your capabilities, attributing your victories to luck and your failures to fate. Psychologists note that this mental erosion can lead to learned helplessness, a state in which victims lose faith in their ability to change their circumstances. Recovery begins with rediscovering your autonomy through therapy, self-affirmation practices, and surrounding yourself with people who recognize your worth without conditions. Healing requires detaching from the narcissist's approval and reclaiming your internal compass. Narcissists, paradoxically, are among the most miserable people alive. Beneath their arrogance lies a fragile ego terrified of inadequacy. Psychologists call this grandiose fragility, an emotional contradiction where pride disguises emptiness. Because they cannot tolerate being wrong, they construct an alternate reality where they are always the victim or the hero. Even when they know they're deceiving others, they persist, driven by the terror of insignificance. Yet this same delusion prevents real growth, trapping them in cycles of self-sabotage. They rarely achieve lasting success because every endeavor is fueled by ego rather than purpose. For the victim, one of the most damaging tactics narcissists use is identity erosion. Through subtle jabs and emotional manipulation, they make you question your sense of self. Psychologists explain that this creates cognitive dissonance, the painful clash between who you know you are and who they make you feel like. You begin to internalize their criticism, seeking to fix yourself rather than recognizing their abuse. To heal, psychologists suggest identity reconstruction therapy, reconnecting with passions, values, and people that existed before the relationship. You must remember who you were before their distortion became your mirror. Narcissists thrive on control, and their efficiency depends on how many people they can manipulate at once. Psychologists describe this as supply management. Each person in their orbit serves a different purpose, one for admiration, another for attention, a third for pity. When one source of supply resists or escapes, they quickly replace it. To maintain this network, they use future faking, making false promises about a shared future to keep their victims emotionally invested. They'll say, "We'll travel together next year," or "I see us starting something big." Psychologists identify this as hope-based control, exploiting the human need for security and meaning. Why is this tactic so devastating? Because it entwines your dreams with their manipulation. You begin working toward a shared vision that never existed, and by the time you realize it, your emotional energy is depleted. Psychologists emphasize that detachment begins when you stop expecting closure or accountability from a narcissist. Closure must come from within, through acceptance, boundaries, and the understanding that their love was never about you. It was about possession. When a narcissist involves themselves in your future plans, it's never about support, it's about infiltration. The pronoun "we" becomes their favorite weapon, a linguistic trick to blur the line between your goals and their control. "We should do this," "we can achieve that," phrases designed to sound inclusive but serve as subtle chains. Psychologists urge victims to reclaim their individuality by rephrasing such thoughts. Not "we will," but "I will." It's a small shift in language but a monumental step toward autonomy. Ultimately, narcissists don't just crave attention, they crave ownership. Psychologists agree that their relationships are never about love, but about power dynamics masquerading as affection. Once you see through the illusion, their power dissolves. The spell breaks. The manipulation loses its force. The road to recovery may be long, but every step away from their influence is a step toward freedom, a return to the self they tried so hard to erase. When a narcissist tells you they care about your dreams, what they truly mean is that they see an opportunity to infiltrate them. Their words are honeyed, their tone supportive, and their timing perfect, just enough to convince you that they are a partner in your journey. But psychologists reveal that this display is an illusion, a carefully crafted manipulation designed to hook you emotionally. Narcissists use what experts call future faking, the act of making grand promises about shared goals or a beautiful future to gain your trust and emotional investment. They speak of teamwork and encouragement, but their actions always betray them. They rarely lift a finger unless directly asked, and even then, their help comes with strings attached. Strings of control, guilt, and dependence. What masquerades as support is, in truth, surveillance. They are not building your dreams, they are mapping them, so they know exactly how to sabotage them later. Psychologists emphasize that narcissists view other people's ambitions not as something to nurture, but as potential tools of manipulation. If you succeed, they lose dominance. If you fail, they gain validation. Therefore, they prefer to subtly keep you in a state of uncertainty, neither failing completely nor achieving true independence. They offer just enough attention to make you believe in them, while ensuring your progress depends on their involvement. This psychological tactic is rooted in dependency conditioning, where victims learn to associate progress with the narcissist's approval or assistance. The effect is devastating. You begin to doubt your ability to move forward without them. To break free, psychologists recommend autonomous reinforcement, reclaiming the belief that your dreams belong solely to you. Create small victories on your own, no matter how modest, because each independent success chips away at their illusion of indispensability. Dreams are sacred, symbols of hope and identity, and narcissists instinctively know this. Psychologists note that they target dreams precisely because they represent freedom. By embedding themselves into your goals, they ensure that your happiness is tied to their presence. They say, "We'll do this together," but what they mean is, "You won't do this without me." This is how the narcissist builds emotional dependency, a subtle but powerful psychological cage. Victims begin to feel that their dreams are safer with the narcissist, unaware that this dependency is the very mechanism of their control. According to trauma specialists, the brain under chronic manipulation begins to blur the line between comfort and captivity. You mistake the abuser's presence for stability. The antidote, psychologists suggest, is self-separation. Emotionally distancing yourself even before you physically leave. Protect your goals like private treasures. The less they know about your ambitions, the less they can weaponize them. Narcissists are architects of illusion. They construct futures that shine brightly in your imagination but collapse the moment you approach them. They will promise a life of shared success, yet every move they make is driven by self-gain. Psychologists explain that narcissists suffer from instrumental empathy, the ability to understand others' emotions only to exploit them. They might appear invested in your future, but their real interest lies in how your success reflects on them. They crave the admiration that comes from being associated with your achievements without contributing to them. This is why your victories never feel like yours. They will find a way to take the credit or to remind you that you would not have succeeded without their help. When your progress threatens their ego, they shift tactics, undermining your confidence, planting seeds of doubt, or even subtly sabotaging your plans. For victims, recognizing this cycle is crucial. Psychologists advise that once you notice patterns of invalidation, document them mentally or in writing. It helps break the trance of manipulation and rebuilds trust in your perception. The emotional damage of believing a narcissist's false promises can be profound. Each disappointment chips away at your trust, not only in them but in yourself. Psychologists describe this as hope fatigue, a psychological exhaustion that sets in when victims repeatedly cling to the hope of change that never comes. You keep forgiving, believing, and waiting, thinking maybe this time they'll keep their word. But hope, when tied to deception, becomes a weapon against you. Narcissists exploit this blind faith, knowing that your empathy will always give them another chance. To heal, psychologists recommend practicing radical acceptance, acknowledging that the narcissist will not change and that their love, support, and promises were performances designed to control, not connect. Acceptance is not surrender, it's freedom from illusion. Every moment spent believing the narcissist's words is time stolen from your own life. Psychologists warn that long-term exposure to such emotional manipulation can lead to anxiety, depression, and complex trauma. The nervous system, constantly anticipating the next disappointment, becomes hypervigilant. You live in emotional survival mode, always preparing for the next letdown. Yet, recovery is entirely possible. Experts suggest rebuilding through boundary reconstruction, a therapeutic process where victims learn to separate their emotional world from the abuser's influence. It starts with silence. Stop explaining, stop justifying, and stop giving them access to your inner world. When you recognize someone's narcissistic traits, the most powerful act of self-preservation is emotional detachment. Psychologists strongly advise that you stop sharing your dreams, secrets, and vulnerabilities with them. The less they know, the less they can steal. Narcissists are emotional thieves. They don't just take your trust. They drain the meaning from your aspirations. Protect your plans as sacred ground, because to a narcissist, your dreams are merely blueprints for manipulation. Ultimately, psychologists agree that healing from a narcissist's deception requires not only distance but also rediscovery. Reconnect with the self you were before their influence, ambitious, capable, and whole. Surround yourself with people who celebrate your progress without trying to control it. Remember, the narcissist's false promises were never a reflection of your worth, but of their emptiness. And once you stop seeking validation from their broken hearts, your dreams will once again belong entirely to you. Pure, untainted, and finally, free.